How do we get onto capes from historical
Sorry, Tudors. Yeah.
I think the question is, Amy, why don't we talk about capes more often?
Why is this podcast just about capes? Yeah, we could do. To be fair, I'm going to write this down. We're going to do 1 week about historic capes.
Okay.
I'm writing it down. Welcome to the Historians in Training podcast with Amy, Corey, and Josh. Say hi, guys.
Hello, everyone.
Today, we are going to be talking about heritage and, well, field trips, school field trips, basically what we remember as kids going to do history projects, all that kind of stuff. So anyone can get us started, really.
Well, being from the north, it's probably not surprising to anyone that the education system has sent me down the coal mines, just like my ancestors for hundreds of years, at least 2 or 3 times in my life. But while I am being a little bit snarky, the National Coal Mining Museum is actually pretty cool, to be fair. Just maybe not for repeat visits. It is, fun fact, it is literally an old mine, and they literally just send you down into the mine. That is the museum. There is a sort of traditional museum part, but it is literally stick a helmet on a bunch of kids and send them down a mine shaft.
What a great way to experience history, though.
Do they send the mouthiest kid off first, dressed as a canary, just to see what happens to him?
They should have done, really. They should have sent them with a malfunctioning light as well, so they can't find the way back.
Was that kid you, Corey? Be honest.
I always did feel really lonely on those trips. Yeah.
Everyone's standing 12 feet behind you.
Yeah. No, but I am taking the mick a bit. My memory of it is a little bit blurred now. It's been a long time since I've been, but seriously, like if you're ever up in that part of the UK, it is really really cool, and I would really recommend it.
Do they have a kind of host to guide you through the mine and like tell you about it?
No, they just set the kids free.
It's more like the Hunger Games, Amy. You go down the shaft, and then
all you get is an HB pencil.
If you don't bring enough coal back, you don't get your supper. That's how it is in the north, right?
Sounds harsh.
No, there is a guide there. Don't worry. And it is quite. I'm trying to remember it. I think it is very it is a little bit scary, I think.
Yeah, as young kids, were you in primary school when you went?
See, I think I was. Yeah, I think this is like towards the end of primary school, I reckon. Maybe like the start of secondary school, around that time. I've been at least twice, I think, in school trips. It is quite an experience. Like it is genuinely quite intimidating. You don't feel in danger or anything. Obviously, it is very safe, but it is quite intimidating all the same. Going down an old metal elevator into basically a dark cave, right?
Does it give you a sense of what it must have been like being a child labourer in a mine?
Well, you joke, but yeah.
No, I'm not joking.
I mean,
I'm not joking.
Oh, right.
Child labour is a thing that happened in mines. It's not.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely get a little bit of that. I mean, it's one of those museums which is more geared to sort of showing you what the experience was like, rather than just going into like a traditional British museum style look at all the exhibits, right? There is a little bit of that before you go down, but it is definitely geared towards showing you the experience, right?
I think that's the case with a lot of school trips.
Yeah.
The experience really is what they're trying to push across, rather than make you sit or stand and go around a load of historical objects, which these days would be amazing for us. But as a kid, It's just kind of like, okay, that's a dress that was, Victorian dress, cool, whatever.
Yeah.
But I remember
it's far more engaging, right?
I think it's a great way to make history really interactive, and it really gives you that experiential side to it.
However, what point do you think they go too far? Because I did a Victorian thing as a primary school student, and so they did this whole kind of like, oh, this is what it's like if you were students in a Victorian school, which was great.
That sounds so fun.
It was fun.
Did you get caned?
No, we didn't get caned, but the mouthy kids.
Not very realistic.
The mouthy kids got pretend cane. So because even at this age, we were sort of aware. So what would happen is she took 3 students who were talking out and then obviously had like a carpet or something and smacked it with a cane thing. And then she told those kids to come in looking like all hurt and stuff. I think the thing that struck me was we had these blackboards which you had to write on. And now I wasn't very good at spelling at this point, so I did spell something wrong, which prompted me to be wearing a dunce cap for the rest of the lesson. Now, I understand that's historically relevant, but that's still singling out a student for not being able to spell properly in front of his peers.
Yeah.
I guess they had to make it as real as they could.
Yeah, make it as real as they could, but you know.
Does seem a little bit cruel, I have to
Well, no, it's
Is that where your obsession with hats has come from, John?
Yeah, it's where I wear all hats. But have you noticed you've never seen me in a party hat because I can't wear the cone hats anymore because of the dunce.
It's trauma.
It is trauma. No, I mean the reenactment was fun though. It was interesting to see, but obviously we were probably playing students who were a bit more well off than others because we were actually going into school in Victorian times.
Oh yeah, that's true.
But yeah, I the kind of walking tours are interesting because obviously they hire, I don't know if it's just staff or actors or something to just be there doing like laundry, doing the everyday Victorian tasks while these students are going around. So
yeah,
you don't think about it when you're a student, but obviously they must like wait around the corner for students to turn up and then go, right, okay, let's do this. They can't just be doing that all day, every day. But
well, you know, they've got to stay in character, haven't they? But no, I would imagine they'll kind of flick a switch and channel their inner Victorian when they have to.
I did go to a place like that in his school trip as well, it was a Tudor house instead, and for the life of me I can't find or remember the name, but it was, you know, very like that, as in it's supposed to be like a living Tudor house, right? And the kids are all sent to do random stuff throughout the day. But like I remember they asked volunteers for parents, and my mum volunteered, and my mum was actually taken into the kitchen and dressed up as a Tudor and made to cook all day. So, and as far as I'm aware, yeah, she genuinely was cooking all day as a volunteer Tudor.
And she didn't get paid for it, so
no,
free
no, she was a
labour.
volunteer.
Free labour.
Yeah, but I imagine she probably got to eat some food, which possibly was more than the Tudors were paid at that point anyway. I did a Tudor thing as well. A place near where I live called Wellington Hall. We went on a school trip there, and Wellington Hall is kind of one of these like recreational places, like the type you go take a dog to walk or something. So you're on the land so often, but then as a student, as a primary school student, you're like, okay, here's the historical element of it, and then we were dressed up as Tudors and. Yeah, and at the time you think, oh god, I like the tights were a major problem, but the cape, I love the cape.
Yeah, I could see you wearing capes, Josh.
If wearing a cape was
go with your hat.
If wearing a cape was acceptable, I would wear a cape all the time.
Channel your inner Marvel superhero as well.
Josh, you've got to make wearing capes acceptable. I fully expect you, when we next get back to uni, in our master's seminar, for you to stride confidently in.
Cape billowing behind me.
Exactly.
I'll have to pay someone to I'll have to pay another student to walk in front of me with a fan, just so
exactly.
Yeah. The lecturers will love it.
Yeah, they would.
As long as I come up with some historic reason for doing so.
Oh yeah.
No, just don't even acknowledge it. Just make the cape normal, right? Make it seem like this is the most normal day in the world for you. You're just wearing a cape.
Yeah,
and people will emulate you. You're a trendsetter, Josh.
I'm really not a trendsetter.
How do we get onto capes from historical
Sorry, Tudors, yeah.
I think the question is, Amy, why don't we talk about capes more often?
Why is this podcast just about capes? Yeah, we could do, to be fair, I'm going to write this down. We're going to do 1 week about historic capes.
Okay.
I'm writing it down.
I don't know if we'll actually be able to find a relevance there.
Surely some.
I'm sorry, but we in the past have done quizzes on gloves. We've done quizzes on dresses. We can do quizzes on capes. Capes existed before superheroes, so
that is true. Okay, I'm down for that.
Yeah, but yeah, so we had the whole Tudor experience with the dressing up, and then everything was called luncheon, and then for the next year for some reason I never said the word lunch, I just said luncheon. So
as soon as you said luncheon, my brain just goes to Downton Abbey, like straight away. one of my favorite shows.
That's kind of what these historical places are trying to do. They're trying to get the kids to interact as if they were partaking in that kind of lifestyle. It's an interesting way of doing things. I mean, it's certainly not something that you get when you're just walking around a museum.
No.
But then when you're a kid walking around the museum, you're not like... I mean, I don't know about you guys, but this is something I've noticed, which is when you're... So there's places I've revisited as an adult now that I'm really historically interested in, going, oh, wow, this is really interesting. And I remember going as a kid just being like, yeah, like you're just waiting to visit the park bit and then your parents are walking around. You're just like, and now I'm very much on the wow, this is amazing. And part of that I blame on my architectural history course, which now makes me look at every time I look at a building, like an old building, I'm just like, oh wow, that's classical architecture. Oh, that's Gothic. Oh, that's very reminiscent of Georgian. And like that's what I do now.
Support beams.
No, it really is. It's really like, oh my god, the ventilation is way further along than many of its counterparts in other cities. And genuinely, that's the stuff I'm looking at now. I really love it. But as a kid, I would have just been like, oh, it's an archway. I'm like, no, it's a pointed archway, which means so. But I don't know if you guys have the same sort of thing, especially with places that you've like places around Nottingham. I noticed now Nottingham Castle, which used to just be Robin Hood. No, I'm just like, no, that's got some historical significance. You know, Nottingham Castle.
I think it must be a really big task for museums currently to kind of keep up with the times, as it were, and to make their exhibits more interactive, because obviously they want to engage younger children that may not be engaged in obviously the normal traditional museum exhibits. So I think it's like we've seen with the box, there's a lot of interactive elements, even though they may seem quite traditional in their form. They've added little things to make them more interactive and appeal to younger children and families.
I think there's something interesting though, in the sense that when you talk, because we talk about obviously engaging younger children with this sort of more interactive experience, less sort of just looking at traditional exhibits. But do these sort of, like, have you found as adults, like going back to places like, I know we've all been to Jorvik, for example, these kind of experiential museums, are they still as engaging as adults as they were as kids? Does the dynamic sort of reverse itself as you grow up and you're more interested in traditional exhibits and you're less? And does the experience feel a bit gimmicky as an adult, do you think?
Are you asking if we become more boring?
Yeah, basically, right? I'm sure.
I don't know about Jorvik, because I've only been there as a kid. I haven't revisited it as an adult, but I did visit the Black Country Living Museum early on in secondary school, so when I was quite younger, and then I revisited again before I went to university, and I found it just as interesting the second time round, maybe even a bit more because I was older and I might have had, you know, that kind of more developed thinking and thought more about kind of questions and things, which I wouldn't have thought of when I was younger. And I actually really love these kind of open air living museums. I'd love to go to the ones in America that we've been learning about recently, and because they just seem so... It's kind of like when you're reading historical fiction, right? And you get that kind of really clear experience side of things that we may not necessarily look at when we're studying history for essays or whatever. So it's kind of the same thing. You're kind of putting yourself in that time period. You're kind of getting a sense of the smell, what it looked like, what it felt like to be in that time period, which we sometimes might miss studying history at our kind of level.
Definitely. I mean, there's only so much you can get from actually looking at books, you know, to be blunt, right? There is definitely a value in seeing it depicted.
And I think that there's always a level of appreciation, especially when you're an adult. So when you're younger, it's easy to do these kind of exhibits because it gets the kids engaged, whereas there are some things that as an adult you may be so aware of in comparison to when you're a kid. So if you took a kid around a World War II museum, they might understand World War II a bit, but as an adult going, it's very much, and you've studied it, it's wow, this is a real this is a real piece of history and everything. So I think best example I've got is, so I'm an explorer leader, and then we go to Jersey every few years, and we visit one of the underground bunkers, and Jersey was actually occupied by the Nazis, one of the few places that were not occupied by the Nazis during the World War. And just this kind of museum, you can see these where these troops were, where everything happened, and they've really fitted out the bunker to be just this incredible. It's got examples of the living space, but it's also got the historic facts, all that kind of stuff. And as a history student, I'm going around going, this is amazing. This is, oh wow, I didn't know that. Oh, look at those bikes. I love bikes. And then you've got explorers. I'm just like, come on, guys, this is amazing. But then I'd step back and go, I do appreciate that for some people, it's not going to be as exciting as it is for, especially reading text. But I absolutely loved it there. And they do this really cool thing where they give you at the start, they give you like an ID card of a person that give you the name and stuff. And it's like part of the interaction there is you have to find out what happened to this individual, like during this time. You have to find out, because they've got information on the individuals as you go through, and then you find out this person was killed, this person hid someone else. And I think that was what was really, I think that probably got to the explorers more than like the writing and stuff.
I love the sound of that though. I love getting to the stories when it comes to history, and part of the reason why I love these kind of experience and living museums is because you really get these individual stories that sometimes we don't see when we're studying it, but I love engulfing yourself in the experience and those kind of stories. I think that's actually a great idea for a museum to do something like that.
Yeah, I agree. That's a really evocative way to put you into the sort of the history, really. There's obviously even the stuff we were talking about earlier of the Tudor Victorian houses of dressing you up and sending you around. It kind of puts you into it, right? But you don't have an identity. You're just a faceless participant, right? But giving you that does sound quite, a little bit more engaging, I think, giving you that role to play in the sort of narrative. That's really cool.
I guess it also gives, as a younger person, it gives you a purpose going around the museum rather than just looking at the text that the curators have put together for the exhibit. Is a lot more engaging for the children. They actually have a role to play and they have something to kind of find out.
But I wonder as well, like, these stories that really hit home, I wonder if it has to do with an amount of knowledge or the closeness to the event in terms of how recent it was. Because I feel like there's a tendency, I mean, you see it in horrible histories all the time, which is like, oh, this guy got his head cut off, oh, stupid death, that kind of thing. Well, this kind of death is funny, but then when you look at it more recent, and you hear about it in museums, it's kind of like, oh, it's horrific. Whereas if you heard about that happening to a Greek guy a few thousand years before, like during ancient Greece, it's kind of like it's made comical, like the guy who like died of heat exhaustion because he was trying to cool himself down in a massive vat of excrement. Like, that happened these days, that would be a torture method, and that would be something that's not funny. Or that happened back in however past 100 years, that would be something that was seen as torture rather than a hilarious method of death.
Yeah. Well, I think it's really easy to get attached, isn't it? I don't know if you've done the same, but I've definitely been. It sounds horrible, but yeah, it can be funny when you're reading, like doing your actual research, and you found someone's done this really stupid thing, and it's actually really ruined someone's life or killed them. And you think, you're not. Your first reaction is, "Oh my god, not you, poor bugger!" It's why the hell did you do that? And that's hilarious. Do you know what I mean? Like it's it's really surreal, like how you mentioned that, because I was thinking about a time when I was reading about a guy in my dissertation who was ordered to shoot at these birds. They were like seagulls or something that were being pests, and he had a Looney Tunes moment in the sense that his gun literally exploded in his face. He's trying to shoot the bird, like something went wrong with the gun and it blew up in his face, and I think it killed him, And either that or he lost an arm or something like that, and that's a horrible thing. But the whole Looney Tunes nature of it makes you kind of funny, and it's weird how detached you can be from history sometimes like that. Yeah,
I think there's definitely something to be said, though. It can be easier to do that when the historical period you're looking at is further away from
definitely.
modern times, because it doesn't feel as raw. Like, I'm sure there were instances of situations in kind of more recent history that would have similar stories like that, but we would think of it completely differently.
You think in 200 years we're going to be laughing about stuff that happens now?
I hope not. Well, maybe.
Probably though.
Yeah. Well, as soon as the pandemic started, we all started thinking, oh, how are students going to be taught this?
Yeah.
Taught the year 2020 in 30 years time.
I'm convinced people are going to do the whole PhDs on a month of 2020.
Yeah. You never know, guys. We could be recruited for some oral history interviews on the pandemic
Oh
in
dear.
50 years time.
I think I could be labelled as a survivor.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, it's not going to have the right ring to it as these other stories. Oh, we hid, we had to lock down, we hid in an attic basement. I played video games, and we had a scarcity of food. I had to wipe my food down, so I couldn't speak to someone apart from on the phone or like over Snapchat, and that was really difficult.
I couldn't get any toilet roll.
Okay, no, that is a problem.
God, I had to eat way more takeaways than normal, guys. It was horrible.
Yeah.
I mean, that does sound horrible after a while.
Yeah, we gained so much lockdown weight.
Yeah.
Oh
right.
yeah.
Right. I think we've all got an experience at a Viking museum. Amy, do you want to take us away on that?
Okay, I'm probably not the best person to start with because I'd literally
Talk about the roller coaster.
I don't remember much. I was really, really young. But no, the Jorvik Viking Centre in York. I remember going to with my parents as a kid, and my memory of it is pretty hazy. But all I remember is a weird roller coaster ride thing with Viking characters, obviously staff dressed up, and also I think it tried to emulate the smells of the period.
I think that might have just been the building.
Oh, maybe.
I think it's just an old building full of dusty figurines and old stuff. I'm going to be honest.
It was fun though, and I remember it being very interactive, and it definitely engaged me as a child. So I think it definitely met its aims there, because it probably is more. Its target audience is probably more aimed at kids.
Yeah, I definitely say that. There were, I remember, because it's all, I don't know, I can't remember if it's mannequins or if there's people and mannequins, but yeah,
I think there's both. I think.
Yeah, so it is sort of the start for some reason is a small roller coaster type thing. It's just a track that you're on, but it's interesting. It's sort of been like being on a haunted house ride, but everything's historically relevant.
Yes.
And then I think I remember vividly a section where they told you about how Viking money works and how you had like one coin, and then literally you just cut that coin in half because and then that's when I learned about this was when money was worth what it was. The money was made of actual precious metal rather than a piece of paper that links to something in a bag. I'm not going to get into that, but yeah. So anyway, I bought one of those coins, and me and someone else in my primary school were very excited because it looked like the coins from the Pirates of the Caribbean thing. So
nice.
That's where we got excited for that bit. Corey, I mean, you've been there a couple of times. What do you think?
No, I was just thinking. I was just having a quick browse on the website, and to be honest, my memory of this place is not quite what I thought actually as well. The time ride, I think, is the I'm looking now is the roller coaster thing we were talking about.
Yeah,
I do remember that distinctly, and that it is literally supposed to take you right into Viking York, I suppose. But,
right. So it's like a time machine thing.
Yeah, they're actually animatronics as well.
Right. I've got, yeah.
Which is
I never put that together. I just thought it was a random roller coaster stuck in a museum. I was like, this is a fun detour.
It's supposed to be the time machine. It's your very own TARDIS, Josh.
Oh, let's not get into it. I just love the idea that like a theme park just had a piece left over and we're just like, do you want this?
Yeah, but no, actually, I don't. Thinking back, I don't remember too much about it apart from the roller coaster and the smell. Like the stuff I'm looking at on the website doesn't actually match what I remember quite a lot. So I'm not sure I can talk about it as much as I thought I'd be able to.
Well, I mean, it must have changed in the 30 years since you've been there. I don't know how old you are, Corey. I just know you're slightly old.
I'm about 75, Josh.
I know that you're like a couple of years older than me, which automatically means, especially as we're talking about school years, when anyone who was 1 year older than you was essentially 50.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, things get fuzzy when you get to my age, Josh. You'll understand. Yeah. But yeah,
those couple of years I've got left.
Exactly.
Of a clear mind.
Yeah, no, it's just, like you guys have said, basically. It is, I think as well, we've got to remember that it is super popular, right? I'm pretty sure it's quite expensive as well to go to Jorvik. So it does strike me as one of the more well-funded sort of historical things you could go to in the country. So I imagine they can change up things quite a lot and add new things and modify stuff, right?
So you've not been back there as an adult?
I don't think I have. I had it in my head that I had, but I'm sure I would have remembered some of this otherwise if I had. I've been to York obviously a few times, but I don't know if I've actually been back to the Jorvik thing, unless I've just got a terrible memory.
So I'm going to move us forward a couple of years, well, more than a couple of years, because we're moving from primary school to our first year university. So, Corey, do you want to talk to us about our first year field trip to London, where we went on escapades around the city to look at all the types of museums?
Yeah, we all got split into groups, didn't we? And I went to the National Maritime Museum at Greenwich and see not just the National Maritime Museum. There's a bunch of other things there as well, which I can't remember off the top of my head, and Elaine would probably kill me for forgetting them. But
come on, Corey, it's boats. It's all
not all
you boats. Amy helping boats.
It's not just boats. There's lots of other things too, Josh.
I think this podcast is just going to make maritime historians hate me.
Yes, maybe.
I love maritime. I love maritime history. It's just I like.
Not your thing.
Well, if you are listening,
it's just.
And you like boats, go to the National Maritime Museum at Greenwich because it is fantastic.
Yeah.
It's got some great paintings, I've heard.
Yes, I love looking at paintings of boats, and there is hundreds of them, and they are fantastic. But it isn't just that. There's obviously there's a lot of stuff. It is a fantastic museum, and it goes up. If you're more into sort of the Second World War, the First World War, there's some fantastic exhibits on that as well. But it's quite a big museum, I'd say, and you could definitely spend most of the day there, to be honest. There is some phenomenal art in there, but like traditional exhibits, they've got that too, right? And it's very close to the Cutty Sark as well, which is it is literally, to my understanding, the sort of like like the Hitchham's Victory exhibit, which I'm sure you'll better talk about as well, Amy. But
Yeah,
it is literally the boat. It's an old sort of sailing clipper. I think it was a tea trader, and it is beautiful as well. And you can just get up and walk about on it. Of course, when we went to London, sure you remember Snowmageddon. So I don't think we were allowed on the Cutty Sark.
Yeah, that was not the week. That was not the week to go on an entire field trip with socks.
Yeah.
Oh my god, yeah, I remember that.
Yeah.
Why did you not have socks, dude?
Because I was.
Wow.
Couldn't you have just bought some socks though?
No, because
Because that would make too much sense. Eh?
Because that would make too much sense. Do you know what? I was going to come back with something, but I was just like, oh, no, that was sensible. But
Yeah.
first year, man.
Those were the days.
It was so weird, dude.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Where were we?
Cutty Sark, Snowmageddon.
Speaking of boats, Amy, you want to talk to us about some dockyards, don't you?
Yeah, so not Devonport this time, which my MA dissertation is on, but no, let's go to Portsmouth Historic Dockyard, which I have found myself going to many times as a kid and as an adult. On the second year Royal Navy module at Plymouth, we are taken to the historic dockyard. And I went not only in second year on the module, but also in third year because I loved it so much. I thought I'd go again. So, where did we go first? The Mary Rose Museum is great. And I also have a similar comparison to the Vasa Museum in Stockholm, Sweden. Now, the differences are the Mary Rose is obviously behind like a big glass. You can still see it really clearly though, and the way they've kind of set it out is still really impressive. But when you walk into the Vasa Museum, you're just hit with this massive boat and ship rather I should say, and you're so close to it, like it fills this entire huge room, and you're so close to it, which you don't get to experience with the Mary Rose because you're walking across like a platform, right? And it's behind glass. Whereas obviously you're not allowed to touch the ship, but you're a lot closer compared to what you get at the Mary Rose, which I thought was really interesting to compare the two. But yeah, going back to Portsmouth Historic Dockyard, you've got the Mary Rose Museum, you've got HMS Victory, you've got HMS Warrior, and you can go on the Victory and the Warrior to kind of experience life on board.
And just to clarify, they're both boats.
They are both. Well, okay, let's call them ships.
Some of the best boats, Josh.
They're some of the best boats because, as Corey says, we love boats.
We do. I won't have any of your sarcasm.
We're definitely referring to them as boats, though, when I think they're more ships sounds more.
Oh yes, because
more glorified than
a ship can carry a boat, but a boat can't carry a ship.
No, you are right, Amy. They deserve to be called ships, as they are humongous.
And Corey, come on in with Victory. Help me out.
Oh, Victory is just awesome, isn't it?
Yeah,
It's just crazy. The scale of it is nuts. And I think I always find it incredible that parts of so when you go really far down, some of the wooden beams down there are actually still the original beams, because obviously most of the ship is
it's replica, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's not real.
Because it needs, it goes through loads and loads of not redesigns, but
remodels,
repairs, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So things being updated, having to be replaced. It is sad that obviously it's not all original, but that's kind of impossible for it to have been. But some of the like core beams, like the spine of the ship, right, are these like giant planks of oak, right, that are probably like 500 years old or something stupid. Like they're very old, anyways. And they're still original. I think that's just incredible. Like everything about that ship's incredible. I think.
I think if you're stuck, no, you definitely get a sense of the spatial element on these wooden sailing ships. And if you're studying naval history, we would highly recommend going because you see so much of what you're studying. Actually, it brings it to life. You're seeing the kind of crowded space that the sailors on lower decks would have had to have endured, and where they would have, like, I think the term is messed, where they would have eaten, took their leisure time. And also what I found really interesting was the officers' little cabins, like officers' quarters or whatever you would call them, because it was nice that they obviously had their own spaces, but even you could still see the cramped nature of it.
Yeah. And you can, of course, see where Nelson, blessed be his name, was shot and died and slept and even had a crap. His toilet is there too.
Yeah.
Josh is laughing, but
sorry, no, it's the Nelson's toilet. It's getting me.
Yeah.
It's
They really wanted to bring every aspect to life.
Yeah. I have a question though, Corey. So you talk about how they've got the original like boards and planks
some
and
of
stuff.
them, yeah.
So how much of the ship? So is there a level of the ship which is sort of a recreation then?
The whole ship is a recreation, essentially.
But
like,
it's
to be honest, yeah, the whole.
But has it slowly been is it a slow process of recreating? Has it been recreated around the shell of the original? So they've been replacing bits that were there rather than just building a ship from scratch.
Right? Originally, right? But you got to remember this ship is very old, and it's old, relatively old, even by the time of its famous moment at Trafalgar, right? Like the original ship had it being had a lot of work done on it even before Trafalgar, and then obviously you go to Trafalgar, and there's repairs from the battle that you need to make, and these ships need a lot of maintenance anyways. They're always having to fix little bits as they go along their lifespan. So yeah, no, there's not really anything original left on the ship from what I remember,
but
other than sort of the main
built.
Beam.
It's pretty much built exactly.
It's like an entity being constantly.
But it's built.
Built.
Its shape and its size and how it looks is pretty much exactly the same.
I think the paint job. I can't remember if the paint job is still the same as it would have been at Trafalgar, but yeah, it's the same sort of model, right?
That's amazing.
Same dimensions and everything, like that. They can accurately show you where Nelson generally would have been, for example, where the officers generally would have been. Like it is true to life in that sense.
Yeah.
It's just not completely original, apart from like a couple of the old sort of gigantic wooden beams that make up the sort of spine of the ship, right?
I need to make sure I go there now, because obviously I didn't do the second year naval thing because I was elsewhere, which we'll be talking about next week. But
spoilers.
Post-COVID, we should take a trip there, guys.
Yeah, I've still not been on the Warrior, so I would like to go back.
Yeah, that'd be fun. I think if we could do it, or maybe the end of this year, whenever COVID lifts. June, is it? I don't know.
And if Josh doesn't love boats as much as we do when we leave, we can leave him in Portsmouth Harbour.
I love boats. I do love boats. I love ships, I should say. I'm just not as good at writing about them as you two.
To be fair, we write about the people on them.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not really that into the battles and the shipbuilding and the really technical side of it, like that. Yeah, like we said,
What are you calling me out for then? Because all you've done now is show that our work isn't that different, apart from the location.
Yeah, that's true.
Yours happens to be on sea. Mine happens. I mean, that there is a lot more of a difference, but
it's a very different living environment.
Both are valuable in their own way.
Different
less polygamous marriages as well.
How do you know? Oh, you've researched it. That's how.
I mean, I guess we don't know for sure, but I'm pretty sure.
Right. Okay. Do we want to move on now to talk about some of the places we've been that has had no relevance to any education, and that has just been either for fun, for travel, or for basically anything that we've chosen to go to which hasn't had a sway on our grades or education?
Oh, Pompeii. Talk about Pompeii.
Yes, please, Corey.
So
Pompeii.
In 2019 went to Rome.
The before times.
It's a mystical time.
This is when you weren't always wearing headphones.
No, and where crowds didn't scare me.
Really? Crowds didn't scare you? Crowds always scare me.
To be fair, they didn't until Rome. Rome in the summer is
crowded.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of a word that's suitable, but I can't really find one. It is just nuts, honestly. If you do get a chance to go to Rome, I would recommend it.
Do
maybe don't go in the height
summer,
of summer.
'cause
Yeah.
it's far too hot and there is far too many people. It is bonkers. But anyways,
Yes, Pompeii.
there's a load of obviously phenomenal stuff in Rome, but we decided to get an early morning train to Pompeii, do a round trip, and come back in the evening. That is not a good idea.
Oh, I was going to
Don't
say,
do that.
how easy was that kind of?
It's only about an hour and a half, 2 hours each way. So the actual train trip isn't too bad, but it's a long day because Pompeii's
Massive.
it's a city, right?
Yeah.
It's not the full city, which is excavated. But I there's nothing original about what I'm saying here or I'm gonna say, but it is absolutely mind blowing, and I think it's obviously not really our realm because it's basically archaeology, right? Yeah, it is absolutely phenomenal the amount of detail you can get from it as well, because obviously you can go there and you can see all these giant old Roman buildings and you can see the mosaics that survive and all these statues, and you can walk around the street, but you can see things like you can see the carriage, you can like see carriage marks right where
Oh wow.
things have been dragged up the street, where
Hmm.
people would, you can see the little public drinking fountains, and you can see the sides have sort of worn down because people have been, reaching in to get drinks from them. You can see little fast food counters. They have their own little Mackies, like
Wow.
like there's little corner shops which have little they're sort of like bowls and that would have held loads of different foods, and essentially would have been, it's a fast food joint, right? Which is phenomenal.
So one thing I know about Pompeii is obviously what happened there, and
Yeah.
a lot of what people talk about is kind of the bodies or outlines of bodies that are what was that like? Because again, that's one of those things that happened. We've chatted about it happened years ago, but then there it is in front of you.
Well, that they are incredible, and I think that's what most people think of, right? When you say Pompeii, and for good reason. But I think what I'd kind of like to suppose get across is that there is far more value, not far more value, but there is also a hell of a lot more value, to be looked at. You shouldn't just picture the plaster casts of the bodies, because they are eerie, they are eerie, and they, it can be quite evocative to look at them,
But no, you're right, because it was a city. It was a living, breathing city with a lot of history within itself.
It's preserved so incredibly well, right? Like it's phenomenal that we can see those plaster casts of those people, and it's incredible. But it's also incredible how you can see what the city was like, and it literally is standing. Do you know what I mean? The city is there, and there's so much of it is intact, and it is just absolutely mind blowing. And I think I do think it's something everyone should see in their life if possible. And I've been to other Romans ruined cities, in Cyprus, and they are also incredible. But Pompeii is just a new level, and you guys should absolutely go.
Yeah, I definitely want to.
I think Pompeii is also one of these places that it's because obviously so far we've really been talking about museums and heritage sites, but it's just a location. So and I know I've done stuff like that. So I've been to Crete, one of the islands on Greece, and instead of there being necessarily a specific museum, there are some places where you have to buy tickets to get into, but you can just go around this place and there's history. A lot of it's linked to mythology. So, birthplace of Zeus. Well, one of the 50-ish birthplaces of Zeus that are around, apparently.
Sure.
But, you've got these places where you can just, and I mean, we've got them in Britain as well, and we just walk by them and think, oh, it's just where we live, isn't it? But it's like Stonehenge, for instance, you drive, obviously that's a big thing, but you drive past it. But when you're in a different country, you really, and then it's linked to this history that you know so much about, like Greek history, because that's what you said. I mean, Greek history is a big thing in school because of the mythology and stuff. So you see all this kind of, like, you see these cities, these ruins of cities, you see these caves, these places, you see where battles were fought, you see all these kind of places, and you just go, wow, like this is just like sort of in their back gardens, really, because it's literally, but it'll be sometimes be in between housing and flats and stuff, and it's just it's crazy.
Yeah.
We do have that stuff in Britain, but because it's your own country, I don't know if it loses its effect. We just go, oh yeah, that's just a thing we have.
Yeah, you don't necessarily appreciate it as much as you do, obviously, when you're, say, on holiday in another country or you're doing research in another country.
Yeah, I think we'll probably talk about this next week when we talk about international travel and stuff. But I think there is a case of, I know a lot of Americans who've come here and then specifically gone to Britain to be like, oh my God, look at this amazing history. And I think we do that as well because there's so much history in Britain. But I think there's some stuff that we'd walk past that we just go, oh yeah, that's just there. That's just, that's just there. And you talk to these Americans, it's like, oh my God, that's amazing. It sort of reminds me of when I went to Epcot in America, and you had all these people taking photos in phone booths, and I'm just like, it's just a phone booth. We have them all around. It's just like, oh no, but it's a big deal to someone else.
Yeah, and that's a really good point. Like, I used to go to school, I used to go to college, 5-minute walk away from Pontefract Castle, which was a humongous castle, and it's even in one of the Shakespeare plays. It has a lining there, but I used to see it every day, and it's I never used to even. It wasn't actually for a long time basically a historical object to me. It wasn't really a historical site to me, apart from at St. George's Day when they used to do as a reenactment stuff. It is weird how you can, I think, at times ignore the history around you, yet still be so excited about going somewhere else as seeing their history.
Yeah, we've got have you guys heard of English Heritage? It's kind of similar to National Trust, but they've got loads of castles around the country, similar to our National Trust have a lot of stately homes. And we've got one just down the road that I didn't even know about, and we went last summer. It's Old Wardour Castle, and it's quite well preserved, not obviously the stately homes with the National Trust, but still you still get a feel for it going round. But I hadn't even really heard or thought about that until we decided to go last year, or the year before. Actually, now it would have been, because we're 2021 now.
Heritage is an interesting one though, because there's a lot of buildings that are protected now by historical significance that can't be knocked down.
Yeah, you've even got grade 2 listed homes and things, haven't you?
You've also got, I think my old school is one, and which lovely. It's a very lovely historic building, but the heating's terrible.
It always is, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, it's a school. It's a school building, so the glass, the heating's on until I mean probably June, I guess. The glass windows are about paper thin, so it's I mean it's a protected building because it's a lovely building, but you just got to think practically.
Yeah,
that's probably why we've had about 1,000 extensions added to my old school since I left. But
I remember being sent home once because the school heater was broke, and I remember sat there thinking, I didn't realize we had heating in the first place.
Yeah, because it's so old. When it gets really cold, the pipes just freeze, and that's it. Because of the piping system, the pipes freeze, and then you've got these huge radiators, which and then basically this entire the entire building, and then I don't know if it was listed because of something about the tiling. Those. The school corridors where you've got tiling that just goes up a third or a quarter of the wall, and then the rest of it's just, and then you've got all the asbestos bits taken out. But
oh yes, of course,
it's just I think that what's always interesting to me is listing these buildings is, and historical relevance is great, but you've got these buildings which are listed as historically relevant, but then what do you do with them, and at what point do they become impractical? You look back at it and just go, it's not the best building to house a school. And
should stuff be protected for the sake of it like that, do you think? Maybe your school is sort of it does sound cool, but there are, do you think a building should be protected just because it's old?
I don't know.
It brings no value, does it? Well, who determines what value it brings?
Still, It's still a viable building. It still works as a school building. It's just, but no. What is interesting is all the blocks that have been built. So there's a block which I spent most of my time in when I was doing GCSEs, because all the humanities were in one block, which was built in the 70s. So it's all concrete slabs. And then recently there was the sixth form block added, and then the languages block added. So it's a huge school now. I mean, it's a huge school back then, but it is still tied to this older building, but I suppose that's kind of what makes it stand out. Hey everyone, Josh and Corey here from a couple of weeks after this episode was recorded. Unfortunately, for some reason, whilst editing, we actually couldn't find the ending.
Small hiccups, they happen.
Small hiccups. You know, we know we're rough around the edges, but you know, we're just starting out, so
we're just improvising this.
We're very much improvising this end bit because we couldn't follow naturally from. I think we ended on schools. Schools was the ending of the.
Something like that. It was a good chat, though. I think.
Yeah, it was about heritage. It was about heritage in schools. Yeah. So, but before we do properly end, I just want to say, you know, we've had a lot of fun releasing the first episodes. That they're out now. If you want to check them out, and if you do like them, and if you do like this one, please send it to your friends, get them to listen. We're on Spotify and YouTube as well. There should be a couple more places we're at.
But it's in all the important places.
It's in all where you get podcasts, we are basically.
Exactly.
So yeah, and you know, please do give us feedback, any comments or criticism. We're welcome to criticism. We're trying to get better. So, but you know, constructive criticism, because we do have feelings.
Yeah. I mean, we can take a little bit of a beating, but you know, be gentle, please.
Yeah. Yeah, there's not much we can do about the sound of our voices. So.
No, I know, and every time I listen back, I despise the sound of my own voice. That's punishment enough, people. I promise you.
Imagine having to edit it.
Yeah, God. Oof.
I don't. Do you know what? When I listen to it, I'm like, oh, thank God Corey and Amy are talking, because then I don't have to hear my own voice. But
yeah, it's the worst feeling. It really is. Yikes.
All right. Well, you can follow us at the Hitcast on Twitter, or follow our YouTube, which is, I think, the same, or just search for the Historians in Training podcast. That's what we are on Spotify as well. And if my editing skills are any good, the outro music should be starting right about now. So thank you for listening. Bye.